Hello, and welcome to II Captain, a new podcast from WWT that explores the challenges and opportunities of implementing Gen AI in the enterprise. I'm Marc DeSantis, a director in IT and leader of the AI Center of Excellence here at Worldwide Technology. And I'll be your co-host of this show, along with Kevin Dana, WWT's VP of IT. So many of the clients we work with, from the giant Fortune 100s to mid and even small market enterprises, are asking how to get started with AI. So to help get that ball rolling, we launched this podcast to share our own experiences and insights from leading AI projects at WWT in hopes that you can use our internal wins and losses as lessons in your own AI journey. Over this first season, we'll talk about how we're using generative AI to create new content, products, and services for our clients and partners. We'll go over some of the technical and business hurdles we had to overcome along the way, and we'll get deep into some of the technology we're utilizing to make it all work. So whether you're an AI enthusiast, a business leader, or a curious listener, we hope you'll find something valuable and interesting in this podcast. Join us as we dive into the fascinating world of generative AI and its impact on enterprise. Real insights from real practitioners. This is II Captain. Let's get started.
WWT presents II Captain.
So I'm curious, going back to maybe last year, middle of last year, maybe walk through what you remember. How did that start?
It was really intense. I remember that. First, just for me, trying to get up to speed on the technology and understanding what was separating, fact and fiction, truth and reality. Yeah. Because, like I said, there was a lot that was being repeated, but there was a lot that didn't smell quite right. So one of the things that I wanted to do very quickly was actually get something in place so that we could start seeing how do these things actually work and what is real. And I think this was a year, maybe a year plus ago, that RAG was just coming to the forefront. So first there were the LLMs, and it was like, well, you could ask a question, bounce something off of it, but you're constrained by the knowledge that's in it and all that. So we wanted to, say what were the capabilities that we could bring to bear in order to, start to piece this together and see, is it really right for enterprise consumption? So I called upon Brian Coles, who's lead over one of our application delivery teams and still a coder. As opposed to myself, who might be the one who wrote JavaScript 20 years ago. So I asked him if he could help, and so he started to pull together a prototype that would enable us to prove out what the capabilities were.
You said that you started by trying to understand the technology yourself, right?
Yeah.
So where did you start?
I actually started on YouTube, I've got to say. I started YouTube, and then I started to find different authors that I trusted through that. They were podcasters or whatnot, but so then I found some newsletters that I thought had good information. Andrew Ng is in particular, I thought, a great resource, especially for getting off the ground. And then, started to just, it was a lot of reading. And then I got my hands on, in Azure, in the studio space, to start playing around with some stuff. Started to learn a little bit of Python in order to, run through some of the demo things that I was seeing, just to get an idea of how hard would this be for somebody. And again, keeping in mind, I'm not a day-to-day coder, but that was just kind of the scratching the surface to get a feel for it.
And did the executive excitement happen right away, or did that come later?
No, the executive excitement was there. I think it was in the March of 23 timeframe was when it first hit. Yeah. And so that was an impetus, obviously, when we needed to be able, I wanted to be able to accurately set expectations of, where's the hype and where's the reality, because that then drives the efforts that we would take in particular spaces, as well as to make sure that we don't sacrifice on other areas that we've already made technology investments that we know will have value right away. So it's kind of, there's long bets that we take, and this is a long bet, and we will see that through. It's clear that it's here to stay. But there's other things that we need to do as well, and they do, they feed on each other as well. We find that we're better able to land on an area for applying Gen AI when there's already a good order of systems, people, and process in that particular space, versus, like we talked about, not saying, well, we just need to dump all this over here and then AI will figure it out. That doesn't work.
And back in those early days, I know a lot of companies were just outright blocking OpenAI, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't want people to feed any of their IP out into ChatGPT. So data privacy was always like one of the initial concerns. How did you deal with some of those concerns?
We didn't want to block things, but we did send out communications and continue to remind and monitor for that. Hey, you're welcome to use these tools as long as you're not using WWT data or customer data in them. So we, back to, being able to get people access to things that enable them to learn how to prompt, et cetera. And there's plenty of things on a day-to-day basis that don't deal with WWT information or customer information that would be viable to, try out. But we also said, this is AI, so you need to not blindly trust, but, validate what you have and then, carry that forward.
And how soon after that did, the Azure engagement begin?
The Azure, implementing the Copilot on Azure, I think we started in...
Well, in particular, like the OpenAI models and, integrating with those.
They were available when we started, which I think was in the April-May timeframe. I need to go back and look, but I think we started in the April-May timeframe to start building that. And it was the earlier models, the ChatGPT 3.5. It was hard to get capacity. It wasn't just generally available, so we had to hunt that down and work with our account rep to secure things. But that was about the time frame that we started, early days.
And can you think back to like one of the earliest wins that you experienced?
One of the earliest wins, or probably one of the earliest realizations that people were expecting more out of a system than we could always give it was, we did, put all of the wwt.com information into a vector database and then started to surface that so you could ask questions of it. But we kept getting complaints of, hey, it's not able to answer who I am. So we were finding the number one question people were asking our internal WWT GPT was, who is Kevin Dana, or who is Marc DeSantis? And we hadn't pulled any of the profile information. So it was just one of those, is like, back to, is like, it's only as good as the information that you give it. And actually that type of information probably needs to be treated a little bit differently as far as how you put it in the system in order to answer those questions, was one of the things that we had to figure out how to overcome. We finally did get the profile information in. We had some fun with some of the hallucinations that came through because, there's different Marks and there's different Kevins, and it kind of aggregated all that together in many ways. But in the end, I think when we finally got it to answer the who am I question, we felt pretty good about things.
Yes. So maybe start talking a little bit about when the roadmap started to materialize. And, so I was asked to join this team and kind of start building out this AI COE. Like, when was that even, something that you were starting to envision? Yeah. And maybe talk about the projects and when that started to, kind of solidify a roadmap.
Sure. Well, I guess if we kind of look kind of at the beginning and carry that forward, we started to build out the WWT GPT really for, I consider that more of a technical proof of concept. Is how do we take a known body of information and make it, see if it could answer those questions? That quickly did morph into, how do we take that and enable salespeople to be able to, get the answers they need from all of what we have in that space in order to answer questions. So a roadmap emerged in a sense based on the demand and arguably the success of the technical proof of concept in that particular stream. And then, as our executive team engaged, they said, I want to educate people across WWT about what are the capabilities as a whole, and ideate on what are other use cases that might have value. So, the other project that you're now intimately involved with would be the request for proposal generator, and that was one that had a potential of high demand in the sense that there's a lot of content that needs to be consumed per RFP and then generated out. So that kind of emerged as a potentially good use case to tackle in a slightly different way, right? Instead of answering questions about content in aggregate, it's generating information based on a smaller set of content. And so that's kind of how we looked at the use cases. And so those two have emerged as our primary use cases that we're working on and have defined roadmaps.
Yeah, and maybe talk about the prioritization challenges, right? Because there's a lot more use cases out there then we have availability to work.
Yep.
So how did you work through the prioritization questions?
So we kind of worked through prioritization two ways, because it is different than in a mature space, right? In a mature space, we generally know how on the what technology to apply and how to apply it. In this case, we're looking at kind of what's the content readiness of a particular solution, what's the technical feasibility, which can be a limiting factor, because we want to look at what would be feasible to achieve versus trying to do a long shot that could spectacularly fail. And then what is the business outcome? So still trying to find something that would be relatively broad brush stroke beneficial for our people, saving them time, introducing them to things. And I think that has the means to build upon itself.
And I was part of some of those discussions. And I remember, again, back to your earlier point, hearing about problems that are being brought to the table that people wanted generative AI to solve that, again, weren't necessarily generative AI problems, right? So was that part of the solutioning there as well, like trying to figure out like which of these are going to be generative AI focused?
Yeah. So we did a 2-day workshop or a day and a half workshop with all of our operations groups as one of these education sessions, and then we broke them out and facilitated ideation. We garnered about 200 different ideas, and like you said, not all of them that were that way, but we didn't want to say you have to get it right for it to be prioritized. What we found is spillover. So you kind of asked about COEs is part of that earlier discussion, and that was where it's like we need to actually get a concerted effort around the climbing the learning curve part, and then how do we get that to be enabled in the business portfolios from an IT standpoint. And the spillover part was that a lot of the other ones were predictive analytics, AI ML types of things. So we wanted to be able to feed those into that team as well, which is a COE also. So we're finding opportunities, benefit in the sense that it got people thinking about where are the areas that we can improve and be more efficient or be predictive. And that has kind of filled up our coffers, so to speak, with a decent backlog. So now what we're trying to do is skill up so that we can start working through that.
Yeah. Is there a way, or what has been your experience in taking some of the learnings, whether it's, the Andrew Ng dispatch, email that comes out once a week, or some of these YouTube videos? How do you take those and turn them into enterprise grade solutions?
I think it definitely starts with getting that alignment from silos into a center of excellence of skilled people that have the same passion for learning. And like I said, my ability begins at seeing something that I find interesting and learning about it, understanding it, but then the implementation, I'm time constrained. So one of the things I really enjoyed as we've done this is being able kind of in war room scenarios to get, hey, we have a Teams chat as well where it's like, I was reading about this seems like it may be applicable in this space. And so in this case, we leave room for some of that experimentation, where in more of a traditional IT delivery sense, we're kind of more focused on understand the business problem and then how we're going to implement it and then get it into production as quickly as possible. In these spaces, we're trying to produce that value, but we're also saying, because it's so new and things change so often, it's like, well, we did this time, but I just read about this other way. Can we switch things around? And I think that's
part of the challenge too, right? Like, how do you commit
versus balance or go back? But I think also with that is following some sound architecture principles that the team implemented even from the early days, so that we weren't so tied to, it wasn't hard coded in. We could switch out LLMs. I think the team even ended up creating an LLM router so we could actually build in multiple LLMs and not tie ourselves to things. And then even the structure of the flows that we built were such that we could introduce new ones, et cetera. So doing some of those things that are part of the old school method enable us to apply in the new realm in a way that at least then we're not saying, hey, we need to rewrite the whole thing so we can try this. And I think that pays off in dividends.
Thank you for listening to our first episode of II Captain. As IT leaders looking to drive AI initiatives, you need to separate fact from fiction. Prioritize AI projects based on content readiness, technical feasibility, and business impact. And build solid technical foundations for data privacy and executive expectations. In the next episode, we'll dive deeper into the challenges and considerations of implementing Gen AI, such as the non-deterministic nature of Gen AI and the importance of having a consistent set of tools for productivity. We'll also discuss the life cycle of new technology introduction, the hype around AI, and the necessity of aligning AI with data management and governance for effective use. We'll see you next time.